Gonna get started in just a little bit. Hang in there. All right, I'm going to put a pause on this real quick, although it doesn't want to be paused. There I am. Well, today we're going to be visiting or revisiting a 201-2 that I've already live streamed, or I should say already videotaped and premiered. It's Ronnie Links out of the great state of Nevada. Winnemucca, Nevada. It's seared in my brain. I don't have to look at it anymore. And the last time we presented Ronnie Links, which she affectionately calls a leather eating machine, kind of a hopeful statement because it definitely was not able to eat leather when it arrived at the old workshop in Oconto. Now in the Twin Cities, I've taken it through the workshop magic here, and you already saw it premiered. And it went through a wide variety of different sew-offs. All of these right here, I did my famous sewing in a circle. I had a chance to do 8 layers of cotton, which doesn't sound difficult, but give it a try. It's a lot tougher than you think. I did heavy grade denim, 6 layers of that. Had a chance to go through a wide variety of other things. I'm trying to see what else I did. Did 100% polyester, kind of like for the holidays. Also sewed through 12 layers of parchment paper. Parchment paper is like cement when it comes to sewing through it because of the density of the paper weave. And this particular paper is a repurposed paper that comes with Amazon orders. If you order through Amazon, you've seen how they pack it with this type of paper. When you wrap this up to 12 layers, it's tough. And yet Ronnie's machine did it with no problem, but I couldn't show it sewing leather because it didn't have any. Then Susie and I visited a local Goodwill, a place that she's donated a lot of items to, and lo and behold, they had a beautiful leather satchel purse that we were able to cut down, and now we've got leather. Haha! It's great to have leather again. I feel like there's a gap without leather. I'm so used to presenting it with all of the machines, from featherweights to FOFs. It doesn't matter. There's almost always a leather sew-off. So now we can do that, and then we'll have to look for another bag. So, yeah, what do you do? I mean, when you're in a transition point, you just got to kind of go with the flow. And so, anyway, let me zoom in on this machine that's going to be heading back to Winnemucca, Nevada. And we'll finally get a chance to see this leather eater eat some leather, sort of, kind of. Yeah. Zoom in on this. And again, this is a machine that is from the 1950s, a little bit younger than the other machine that we're going to be featuring today that belongs to Carol Johnson, that I believe is from 1946. I'll have to look at that and see, but I believe it is 1946. So I'm going to zoom, 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 zoom. Right about there I think is pretty good. And give you an idea to see what we're going to be sewing through. It's kind of a filler here since I wasn't able to do it before. Let's see here. So this is the leather that we were able to come up with. Let me get down here. This is the leather we were able to come up with that is, I mean, it's the thick of thick. You look at the side of it here, it's probably close to 3 ounces. And I'm going to start with this leather eater by putting 2 of these together. So we're going to be looking at a sew-off that is like that. Now, if you think that that's easy, let me encourage you to take it on and let us know when you'll be shipping your machine to the temporary workshop or the final workshop down near Kentucky, and I'll get your machine back to life again after you've killed it. Because this is probably about 10 to 12 ounces of leather, these 2 layers. I'll get really, really close. You can see it clear. And this is the real deal. This is not that fake leather they got floating around. So let me get this underneath the presser foot. We're going to go through these 2 layers, and then I might decide to be outrageous and see if we can go through 3 layers of this. Now take into account that this is not a leather needle in Ronnie's machine right now. This is a 9014 Schmetz Universal needle. Y'all know that that's my go-to needle. That's my favorite needle of favorite needles. And I beat the daylights out of these Schmetz needles. And most of you know by now that Schmetz follows us on Facebook. They follow us on YouTube. They love what we do with their needles, but sometimes they cringe just a little bit when they see what I'm about to do to one of their non-leather needles going through this much leather. But I've got that much confidence in Schmetz that I think that they can handle it. And even after this needle has already gone through all of this on top of it, which included the paper sewing, the denim sewing, the blah, blah, blah sewing, a lot of sewing on this Schmetz needle already. And we're going to run it through the paces just a little bit more to see if we can push it to the absolute, hopefully not the breaking point, but nearly the breaking point. So let me get the take-up arm all the way up, and let's give these 2 layers a go and see how this 201-2 manages it. Now, it's obvious to say the ideal setup here would be to have a leather needle by Schmetz. Probably a 110 or maybe a 100, which equates to a size 16 or a size 18 needle. We're sewing with a size 9014, and it's a non-leather needle. But again, Ronnie's leather eater 201-2 out of Nevada has gone through workshop magic here in the Twin Cities. I think it can get the job done. Now, the only thing to take into account is if we're not using a walking foot or a roller foot, we might see that those stitches are a little bit more condensed because of the feed factor of moving 2 thick layers of leather like this. If we take on 3 layers, we're going to see even more of a compression of the size of those stitches. That's a given because of the feed factor when you're dealing with a standard presser foot, a non-leather needle, and you're trying to take a task on like this. So we're still going to be looking at those stitches with scrutiny to see if they're page 34 or page 34 plus, but we will see that they are a little bit compressed, okay? So I'm going to put on just a little bit of music to get me inspired as I get ready to launch, and then I'll shut that music off as we get ready to take the sewing task on. All right, are you ready? A little bit of calypso, I think. Oh yeah, this is getting me in the groove. I'm feeling rather calippish. Sounds like I need medical treatment. I'm feeling calippish. All right. I love this music, but we're going to stall it for a second here. All right, here we go. 2 layers of this heavy grade leather from this bake satchel from the great folks at Goodwill. And I am going to guess, working with a lot of leathers, that this is going to be a colorized veg tan leather. A lot of you sew with veg tan, you love it. And it's a wonderful, wonderful leather to sew on. So I'm going to call this a colorized, if you will, a colorized veg tan leather. And we're going through about 10 to 12 ounces of it with these 2 layers. Let's see how we can do with this 1950s 201-2. And I'm going to attempt to go through this without a balance wheel boost, a little hand turn. We're just going to go with the grit of the motor and see if we can get the job done, all right? All right, keep your fingers and toes crossed. Here we go. Wow. No hand turn, no boost, just the raw grit of this 201-2 from the 1950s. The leather eater, as Ronnie out in Winnemucca, Nevada calls it. And we just went through these 2 layers, just absolutely lickety split. We're going to go ahead and look at these stitches. And again, this is, if you joined us a little bit late, this is a fulfillment. This is a fulfillment because Ronnie calls this a leather eater, and when I showed it in the last premiere, I couldn't do any leather sewing, didn't have any. But now we've got some leather, and now we can check out these stitches. I'm hoping. I'm going to set them just like that, and we'll zoom in on them. That's our top stitch right there. And then we're going to check out that lock stitch as well. All right, let's get in on this. Well, I'll tell you one thing. I haven't even gone across yet, and I'm already feeling a page 34 plus. Let me just rotate it a little bit more towards the camera here. I'm hoping I don't have too much elevation on this leather. Jiminy crickets, those are beautiful stitches. And look at the spacing and the formation of those stitches as well. Going through this much leather with a non-leather needle, and yet we have a stitch integrity, a stitch presentation that people would drool over that are using a leather needle. And it just goes to show you the workshop magic gives these machines a superpower. Let me loosen this camera up even a little bit more so I can go across. And while I'm readjusting here, look at the top of that. Look at the thickness of what we went through. If you think that that was an easy sew off, let me get my hand off the camera. I'm almost got it. There we go. Look at the thickness of that leather. That's what I'm talking about. 12 ounces approximately of leather. And this is going to be my best expert advice and expert guess is that it's a veg tan leather. I almost thought it was Italian when I first saw it, but it has more the consistency of a veg tan. And look at the thickness of that. It's just absolutely insane. All right, so let me go across as slowly as I can, and we'll take a look at these stitches. Unbelievable. Loosen this camera even a little bit more. It's kind of moving kind of stiff, like it hasn't exercised yet today. All right, now I'm going to try it again. There we go. Oh my goodness gravy. Look at the thickness of that. That's 2 layers, and I might even step it up to 3 just so Ronnie can go, oh my gosh, I'm going to get leather needles and go nuts. Absolutely crazy. I don't know what you can see in the camera, but what I'm seeing is absolutely page 34 plus stitching on these 2 layers of this veg tan leather. It's absolutely off the charts. Let's turn it over and look at the lock stitch now. And then we'll contemplate the idea of looking at going to 3 layers of this. I think 3 layers is really kind of a little bit insane, but a little bit insane is kind of how we work in the workshop, isn't it? Even a temporary workshop, we're pushing the limits. We're pushing the limits. I kind of leaned it back a little bit. It might be easier for us to see. All right, let's zoom in on this. This is going to be our lock stitch now through these 2 very thick layers of this veg tan leather. And I'm seeing equally drop dead gorgeous stitches here as well. Look at that. Like I said, if you want to try this on your 201-2, go for it. And then reach out and I'll take care of fixing your machine. I mean, seriously. I'm going to pause right there. Folks, I don't know how we can make that stitch any better. The only way we could maybe improve it even a little bit more, and I'll come out on the shot a little bit, the only way we could improve it maybe a little bit more would be to add a walking foot or a roller foot to Ronnie's 201-2. But again, 12 layers of leather, it is nothing to sneeze at. It really isn't. So I'm going to put on a little bit more of this calypso fun music, and we'll get ready for the possibility of 3 layers. Unbelievable. Wow. I shouldn't say wow, it's workshop magic. We do the impossible all the time. All right, here we go. Oh my gosh. That's even crazy for me. I can't see in the camera. I've got the camera set up right now. Oh my goodness gravy. That's the thickness of about 2 heavy-duty belts. Oh my gosh. Unbelievable. I'm going to put an X by our original stitch line right here. Oh my gosh. Wow. This is a bit terrifying. It really is. All right, I'm going to pause the music. All right, music paused. I should have suspenseful music on, you know, music that basically says, this is absolutely nuts. Look at that from the side, folks. Next to our presser foot. I'm trying to tighten the camera up again now. That's probably 14 to 16 ounces of leather that we're going to attempt right now going through. Again, my best guess is that this is a veg tan leather that this purse was made out of, that was cut down in order to make these sew-off pieces for us. I didn't try this off camera. I don't know what's going to happen. We're dealing with a 90-14 needle. 90-14. It's a mid-range needle. It's not a harpoon needle like our friend Sonny would have called it. You got to get into the 100, 110 range or above to be a harpoon needle. This is a sharp stick needle. And it's one of Schmetz's most popular sharp stick needles. And no offense to our friends at Schmetz with me calling it a sharp stick, because it's a universal needle. It is a sharp needle, but it's got a rounded point on it, folks. If you didn't know that about universal needles, they've got a slightly rounded point so that they can go through woven type materials and knit materials as well and not damage those fibers. So we've already gone through about 12 ounces of leather with a slightly rounded point universal needle, 90-14. Now we're going to attempt to go through about 16 ounces of leather. You can see it right there in the shot. It's probably going to be about 6 millimeters thick. 6 millimeters thick. We'll measure it after we get done. I'll grab that little caliper and we'll do a measurement on it. But let me just say this. I'm actually going for the caliper right now so I don't forget. Let me say this, that this is something that people do not attempt with 201-2s. They do not try it. They don't even contemplate doing it because it's a little bit of craziness. But I think craziness is attached to greatness. And what people aren't used to is the greatness factor that machines that go through workshop magic have. Like this one from Nevada, Winnemucca, Nevada, belongs to Ronnie Link. Or this one over here, that belongs to Carol Johnson that we're going to be stitching on shortly. They don't expect to see greatness from a household sewing machine. They expect to see standard sewing. Standard sewing. If you want greatness, go to one of those big commercial machines or one of those light industrial machines that have a servo motor that's going to be probably between 5 to 10 amps. Don't look at a 201-2 from the 1950s that's got a potted motor of only 0.5 amps, a tenth of an amp more than a featherweight, and you're going to try to go through 16 ounces of leather? Are you absolutely bonkers? Yeah, a little bit. I think bonkers is like an English term. I'm guessing that Alex and Yana over in the UK are grinning along with all of our other friends that are part of the Cow Country family in the UK because they're going, hey, he just said bonkers. Yeah, he did. It's an appropriate term. But that's what we're going to try now, is we're going to try going through 3 layers of this. You know what? Since I've already beaten this needle up so much, if I break or bend this needle, I've got more. And we'll pop another one in and take a second swing at it. But I think we're going to get through it because, let me just say, I've tried needles of every type that you could probably say. And I've never found a better needle than a Schmetz needle. They're engineered with a level of quality that is old age. All the other new needle companies have already made their compromises. Schmetz has stuck to quality without any compromise. And the evidence is proven again and again and again in over 1,000 videos on this channel, where from the very beginning, once in a while I'll dabble and I'll fly over to another needle for fun, like the Hello Kitty needles that are really, really junky needles, quite honestly. And Walmart continues to peddle them. I don't know why. I don't know how. But there they sit on the shelves right next to the Schmetz needles with a cone of shame around them. They've got a cone of shame around, yeah, that's my mouth. They've got a cone of shame around those Hello Kitty needles. I think they're actually called Hello Hobby needles, but whatever. but they're just so substandard to a Schmetz needle. They should really move them a little bit further away so that the Schmetz don't get contaminated somehow. But at any rate, enough blah, blah, blah. In the silence of this temporary workshop in an undisclosed location, I now attempt the impossible with Ronnie's leather eater, trying to get through these 3 layers of veg tan leather. That is the equivalent of close to 16 ounces of leather. I'm going to have my hand on the balance wheel. I think we might need a little bit of a boost. I'm going to be ready to boost it and then let this baby just take off. But I'll let you know if I don't need to boost it. I'm going to tell you, didn't need to boost it, but my hand will be over there ready just in case. Okay? All right, take up arms all the way up. Clutch is, I'm going to double check the clutch, make sure it's locked in. Get my foot on that little button, that little Bakelite button, and let's see how we do with this. I'm nervous. I'm a little bit nervous. I'm being honest with you. But at the same time, I'm equally confident. I'm equally confident. So here we go. I'm going to come out on this shot just a little bit. There we go. All right. 3 layers of veg tan leather. And boy, oh boy, keep your fingers and toes crossed, folks. Keep your fingers and toes crossed. All right, here we go. My foot is actually shaking a little bit. It's like, oh my gosh, what did I decide to do this time? All right, here we go. I went up and down intentionally to show you that I didn't have to go pedal to the metal. I was feathering that foot controller to show you that this 0.5 amp motor, only 1/10 of an amp larger than the featherweight, because of that direct drive positive traction, because of the workshop magic that I flooded this motor and machine with, it's able to go even at a gradual rate through this much leather. Now let's see if we made it through the other side before I get all braggy and cocky and boasty and mosty and all that kind of stuff. Did we make it all the way through those 3 layers? Yeah, we did. And then some. I'm almost inspired to try 4 layers. But you know what? Insanity even has its limits. All right, so let's do this. I'm going to give that a clip. I've already marked the row on the other side with an X so that we don't confuse which is which. We're going to look at that top layer first. And again, you'll notice just a little bit of a stubbiness of the stitching, which when you're going through this much leather is not a shocker. It's not a surprise because we don't have a walking foot. We don't have a roller foot. We have only so much presser foot pressure to accommodate this level of sewing. And we're sewing with a leather needle, a size 90-14. We're sewing with a non-leather needle, a Schmetz Universal, and we should be using a leather needle, probably a size 100 or maybe a 110. I would almost lean towards a 110. One of Sunny's, as she loved to call it, one of Sunny's harpoon needles. All right, so I've loosened the camera a lot so I can get around and move around and check this out and everything. Let's go across and look at this. And I don't know if we can see the edge. I think we can. Let me bring the camera up a little bit. We're going to look at the edge again. Unbelievable. The stitch quality, the spacing, the formation, the integrity of the stitch. Let's pause right there. Look at that. Oh, it just fell. It was so excited it fell over. No, stay there, friend. Stay there. Here, we'll use this caliper to support you. Yeah. We're going to use that caliper. And then we're going to use that caliper to measure you, too. There's that caliper right there kind of holding it up. All right, let's give this a go again. Now, don't fall over again. I know you're in shock. We all are. A little bit. Oh, my gosh, now it fell the other way. All right. We're going to give this a go. We've done the most difficult part of sewing it off, and now we're just trying to keep this big chunk of leather, this lumpy dumpy leather, from falling over. I'm going to go across real quick this time. Oh my goodness. Look at that. Look at that layer on top. Look at those layers on top. What am I saying? Layer. All right, nice and close. Well, I think we can officially call Ronnie's machine out of Winnemucca, Nevada, a leather eater when it can sew at this level. We're going to spin it around and look at that lock stitch now. And I'm hoping that this caliper will help us keep it stable and steady. I hope. So the bottom row, you can see I put that black X on there so that we wouldn't mistake which was which. So this bottom row is the first row we did. That's our lock stitch. And you'll notice the thicker and thicker you go with a leather or any other heavy grade material, the shorter that stitch is going to get because of the feed factor. You're feeding 3 layers of leather underneath the presser foot. But what we're looking at is not the size of the stitch, because we know we can accomplish that by bumping up the presser foot pressure higher, and also by adding a walking foot or a roller foot. We're looking at the stitch integrity. Do we have a nicely formed stitch? Do we have a stitch that has the appearance of being solid page 34 plus? That's our row right there. And I'm frozen on those first stitches because they are absolutely page 34 plus. I'm going to go across as slowly as I'm able, and we're going to look at them all the way to the end. Okay, that was our first row. Now we're going on our second row. This is where we went through 3 layers. Frozen right there. Oh, wait a second. Let me freeze right there. Folks, solid page 34 plus stitches right there. Going all the way across. Again, 3 layers. Frozen. I'm almost seeing a little bit too much upper tension pulling that lock stitch taut. If we were to be sewing 3 layers of leather like this all day long, we would probably reduce that upper tension just slightly, because we're getting a little bit of a compression of that stitch, not because of the layers, but because that upper tension is pulling up a little bit too high. You look at the gap point between each stitch, you can see it's a little bit wider than down below. Let me go down, we'll go look at both of those rows at the same time. They're real close, real close. We've got very, very good feed. But if the upper tension is just a little bit too high, it's going to shorten that stitch because it's pulling up too hard. Well, all I can say is unbelievable. Both stitch rows are, in my opinion, I'm going to zoom in, both stitch rows are page 34 plus. And we did it with a non-leather needle. We did it with a very, very tired 9014 Schmetz universal needle that had already gone through about a 2-hour live stream where we sewed paper, we sewed everything else that really impacts that needle. But Schmetz is known for enduring and for sticking it out and for running the race. And this is the evidence of it right here. The bottom row is 2 layers of veg tan leather, about 12 ounces. And then we added that 3rd layer, so we're almost all the way up to 16 ounces of leather. And again, we hammered through it, laid down a beautiful page 34, if not a page 34 plus stitch. And no skip stitches, no issues whatsoever going through this much leather, this much crazy leather with this 201-2. And now I'm going to come out a little bit. I'll spin the camera screen around so I can kind of see what we're aiming at. We're actually going to measure it now so you have an idea. I mean, you can see how thick it is when I rotate this around. I think you can see how thick it is. That's the equivalent of about 2 heavy-duty belts. I mean, honestly, it is. And the stitching is just absolutely off the charts. Well, let's actually get a measurement of this. A lot of folks like measurements because it gives them something objective. So I'm going to bring in this caliper and tighten this up on there. And I'm going to tell you that it is approximately, I said around 6 millimeters. It's actually 8 millimeters thick. You can see that, I believe, in the shot. Having a little bit of trouble seeing with the glare of that caliper. Let me see if I can. Does that help? Right, like right there? Yeah, you can see it there. 8 millimeters of leather, folks. 8 millimeters. Now, if someone wants to shoot their own little video of their 201-2 going through 16 ounces of veg tan leather with a universal needle, sewing with a Coats & Clark dual duty XP thread, same setup, do the same setup as I have it here, I will gladly post it. And I've offered before, when I do crazy things like this, that someone wants to share the success on their end, anywhere from around the world. We're in 126 different countries. So any 126 countries that want to share a video of your 201-2 going through 8 ounces of veg tan leather like this, using a universal 9014 needle, using standard Coats & Clark polyester dual duty XP thread. You want to do that, I'll gladly show it on this channel. I'll gladly show it on Facebook so that you can say, my machine in Africa, my machine in the UK, my machine in Australia, my machine in New Zealand, my machine over in Finland has workshop magic. You know what? That would be super cool. I've shown you a lot of my tricks and a lot of my techniques for optimizing machines. So if you've been able to master that and get your machine to be able to sew at this level right here, then I'm impressed. Because that 8 ounces, you know, this is, I'm going to leave it right there. This is the thickness we're talking about right here. That's a lot of leather, folks. A lot of leather. Even for this leather-eating monster out of the great state of Nevada, Winnemucca, Nevada. So, Ronnie, I wanted to do this fulfillment so you could see that your machine is not only able to sew paper and cotton and everything else that I showed, and the denim and the blah, 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 but she is ready to get her done with some crazy leather sewing as well. But let me encourage you to add a nice Schmetz leather needle to it, probably a size 100, maybe a 110. And you might even want to look at upgrading the thread a little bit from a standard Coats & Clark XP dual duty blah, blah, blah. And then who knows, maybe you'll be able to send us a video clip, Ronnie, out in Nevada, going through 4 layers of this. Yeah. Oh, workshop magic, workshop magic, workshop magic. Yeah. All right. So let's put on a little bit more of our fun music, and I'm going to pivot away from Ronnie's machine now, and we're going to focus on Carol Johnson's machine. Let me come on a little bit like that. Put on a little bit of our fun music. Maybe? Yeah. All right, I'll stop dancing. We'll move forward here. All right, pause on the music. No, pause on the music. Pause on the music, pause on the music. All right, calm down, calm down. So this is a little bit older. Singer 201-2. And I'm not going to tell you the specific birth date. I'm going to have you look it up. And I'll see if I can bring the camera over. I've got this on a new tripod, also acquired from the good folks over at Goodwill. So someone donated this tripod that I'm using right now. I had Susie's selfie stick before that I was kind of using. So if someone is willing to please look this up, let me just move it a little bit over. If someone's willing to look this up and give us a full birth date, and I'm going to read it because it looks like the bobbin winding spool is in the way a little bit. So yeah, let me see if this light's all the way up. Yep. So the serial number is A like apple. And I'm just going to double check because that second letter I can't tell if it's a C or a G. It is looks like a G. So AG 938563. AG 938563. It's the best I can read it. Haha. So look that up, give us the birth date. I already told you that it's from 1946 when I did the initial lookup of it, but fact check that because I can make mistakes too, right? So if I got it wrong, you can let me know that I kind of like in the last live stream or the earlier live stream, I gave the second letter wrong. I read it wrong, or I read the number wrong or something like that, and someone said, I don't think it's a 66, I think it's a 201-2. And sure enough, I'd read the number wrong. So give us the birth date for Carol Johnson's 201-2 if you'd be so kind. Carol Johnson's. Now you might remember this machine because when I showed it briefly in that other live stream that ended up having a technical difficulty, and it cut out after I showed you how to service the upper tension, and I had earlier shown you how to do the hook disassembly and everything, which can be a little bit tricky and cumbersome on the 201-2. I showed you on Carol's machine as well how to replace the grease and purge the system of all the sludge that builds up in that chamber on the right side of the machine adjacent to the potted motor. And I showed you some other stuff as well, I believe. And but the one thing you noticed right away when I fired up Carol's machine, and if you were watching that live stream, and I know I asked if folks could see it, and they said, yeah. When I fired up Carol's machine, off the back of the potted motor, right over in this area over here, you could see little plumes of smoke coming up. Thankfully, no fire, but you could see smoke billowing up from the potted motor on the rear of Carol's machine. And one of the chief concerns or complaints that Carol had, interestingly, was not smoke. It was simply that the machine was weak. I'm looking back at my notes. I always write notes when a customer drops a machine off, and I put down goals. And it says complete service with focus on increasing, probably not going to be able to see that, focus on increasing speed, which also in conjunction with that is power. And it requires rewiring as well, which I did. Did the rewiring on the foot controller because it had wiring that was not appropriate for the machine. And then it also needed some rewiring in the motor as well. So it needed rewiring in both places. And like I've said before, rewiring a foot controller, this wiring over here you can kind of see, is going to be 16 gauge wiring. It allows for a really, really hardy gateway into the motor so that the motor isn't being starved of energy. I did the same thing on Ronnie's machine as well. Upgraded the wiring to 16 gauge wiring over on this one. Where is it? I'm on the floor. I'm somewhere. I don't know where I am. There it is. That's also 16 gauge wiring over there. Now in the motor you can get away with using 18 gauge. And again, if you're brand new to this channel and you're saying 16, 18, I have no idea what you're talking about. No idea what you're talking about. Well, when it comes to wiring, the lower the number, the lower the number, the heavier gauge that wiring is, the larger load that it can carry. So 16 gauge wiring is going to be able to carry a larger load than 18 gauge, or a much heavier load than say 20 gauge. So the lower the number, the better. But you don't want to go too low either. Kind of like that music we were listening to, kind of a calypso music. You don't want to go too low when you're passing underneath that bar, or you're going to fall on your bottom, or you're going to hurt your back, one of the two. So you've got to gauge a machine, a sewing machine, appropriately for the load that it's going to be carrying, and then give it a little bit larger gateway so that it can handle even a bigger burst of energy. And that motor is always satisfied. It's not going to be starved of energy. So when you go to 16 gauge, you're looking at a gateway of almost 2 to 3 amps, which is much larger than the potted motor of 0.5. But larger is okay as long as you don't go crazy over large. In other words, you wouldn't want to go to, say, an 8 gauge wiring, which is some of the wiring that was on this machine before. Someone had gone like over the top with wiring in it, and then what it does is it actually causes an issue with that energy backing up, and then you got a foot controller that's going to get overheated. So you've got to have enough to flood that foot controller to feed the motor, but you don't want to flood and tsunami that foot controller with wiring that's too large, or you can overheat it. So it's a balance factor, isn't it? All right, so hopefully you were able to look that up by now and find out that if I did it correctly, that Carol's 201-2 is from 1946 and actually has a birthday coming up in December 20th, 1946. The other really cool thing about Carol Johnson's 201-2, and it has nothing to do with this jazzy spool pin lace thingy up here that Carol had on the machine when she brought the machine in, but it has to do with the fact that this 201-2 is from a much smaller production group size than typically you find with the 201s. And I don't have the other one written down for Ronnie's, but I believe it was from 50,000, which is pretty typical for Singer. Carol's 201-2 from 1946 comes from a production group size of only 15,000. So about a third the size of a standard Singer production group. And Singer even went larger than that on certain machines. They might go almost up to 100,000 machines in one production group size. And then they would do the opposite with machines that were a little bit more complex, like the 222K, and they would drop down to about 5,000 machines in a production group. But when you get into 15,000, that does raise the value of the machine, in my opinion. The smaller the production group size, the more rare that machine is. So Carol's got bragging rights. Not only does she have a lovely machine that I think is going to perform incredibly well today on this premiere, but it's also much more rare than most other 201-2s out there. It's about a third of the production group size of most other 201s. So the good news on Carol's machine, as we're looking at it right now, it's got renewed power. And I would say again, from talking to people that used to work in the Singer factories back in the day, actually interviewed one from South Carolina, and that interview is on this channel if you want to check it out, and actually went door to door selling machines and demonstrating them to customers, demonstrating machines like this 201-2. I've been told by more than one person that had that original contact with the machines that came directly from the factory, that the machines that I presented on this channel are stronger, faster, able to leap tall buildings in a single bound than the machines that came out of the factory in the day. The machines that came out of Elizabethport, New Jersey, the machines that came out of Anderson, South Carolina, the machines that came out of the UK, and anywhere else in the world where they manufactured Singer sewing machines. The Cow Country Workshop magic super energizes these machines, as you already saw with Ronnie Links going through 3 layers of veg tan leather, about 16 ounces of leather with a non-leather needle. I don't need to say anything more. That's the proof in the pudding right there. That's the evidence on a video, not a still shot where people can fudge it, but in a live stream type premiere like this where you can see it happening in real time, or in this case, delayed time, but you know what I mean. But at any rate, let me just say this. I'm really excited to present this machine. Carol's machine has renewed power, speed. It doesn't smoke anymore. Yay. After some rewiring and some deep cleaning and specialized servicing of the motor. Again, the motors on these potted machines have almost 30 service points. 30 service points on the motors. So it's not a quick little wub-a-dub down and you're done. You've got to really take it down seriously to a surgical level, as I always say. So enough blah, blah, blah. I'm going to go ahead and zero in now on Carol's machine. We're going to run it through a small little sewing Olympics, similar to what we did with Ronnie's machine. And I think you'll be pleasantly surprised. But first of all, a little bit of music so I can rest my voice. Ah! All right, I got to adjust this camera a little bit so I can actually get in here. It's a good idea. I should actually do a power demonstration. Power and speed before we actually do any sewing. I'm going to come over to this side over here. Oh, that's a good idea too. I'm kind of thinking to myself and saying, good idea, good idea. I should also, I didn't show this yet, I haven't shown it recently, how to adjust the bobbin winding tire so it has proper contact with the balance wheel. Maybe I should do that. Yeah, we'll leave that right about there. So I'm going to turn this leg a little bit further back. There we go. Now I have enough room to get in there by the machine. All right, I'm going to stop this music. I'm going to stop that music for now. And what I want to do is I want to do two things. I want to show you the rate of speed that Carol's machine is generating now. And speed is part of that kinetic factor that also translates for sewing machines to a greater degree as far as power. And we're going to see that power demonstrated in the sew-offs, but I also want to demonstrate it now just because of how troubled this machine was with the wiring, the motor issues, and the impact of workshop magic and being able to restore that grit and that gusto to this great machine from the 1940s. So I'm going to go and disengage the clutch, just turn our little stop action to the front, and we'll see if we can kind of check this machine out. And then I'll show you real quick how to adjust one of these. A lot of people don't know, and they either have this turned up so high that they've got to really put a lot of pressure down on this to get it engaged, and then the winding process takes forever because it's putting such a weight, such a drag, and such a burden on the motor. You've got to have enough to make good contact, along with keeping your bobbin winding tire and also the rim of the balance wheel clean and free of oil so that it's not slipping. But right now I just want to spin this machine up and give this machine a chance to kind of scream out with energy. I'm even going to shut off the little heater down here. See if I can shut that heater off temporarily. And we'll kind of fire this girl up and see if we can give a listen. All right, you ready? Here we go. It's actually vibrating the whole machine. The whole machine is kind of vibrating because it has so much power now. That's a lot of get up and go, folks. And I know you can't see it from the balance wheel side. You can maybe carefully rotate the machine around. You can see it more from an angle as I'm knocking things down here. Let me get that hanging back up there again. Show you the side of the balance wheel. I just want you to get an idea of the energy restored to this 201-2 now. Hoping nothing else falls. They got things like starting to fall over the place here. All right, let me spin it up again. And listen for that power. Listen for that energy. Listen for that get up and go on Carol Johnson's machine. Oh, I got to turn my little screen around. All right, here we go. even with the load of the bobbin winder. A little bit of a drop. That is a meaty, strong, happy motor that, by the way, no longer smokes. Ha ha! Yes! All right, let me spin this machine back around and we'll actually put her to the test now and do some sewing. Oh, I wanted to show you one other thing. Oopsie doopsie. Oopsie doopsie. All right, let me zoom in on this. Oh, I'm seeing just a little bit of varnishing on there still that I need to get off. So right behind this engagement right here, if I rotate this down, you can see a screw back there. And just ignore the varnishing. I'll go after that. I don't think I've got the right brush on the Dremel right now. But if you've never adjusted it before, that little screw that we're focused in on right here allows you to fine-tune this bobbin winder so that it has enough tension, but not too much tension, to engage against the rim of the balance wheel. So if we have to make adjustments to it so that it's making better contact and not excessive contact, we can do that with a simple little screwdriver similar to this. And what we can do is, right now I've got it perfectly adjusted, but I'm going to go ahead and mess it up just so I can show you what you sometimes end up inheriting when you acquire a new machine. Get that into there. We'll loosen that screw. And I'm going to tighten it up again. I allowed it to slip a little bit. I allowed it to adjust out. And now when I engage it, it's not making proper contact with the balance wheel. Right now it's engaged and it's turning freely. See that? It's turning freely. So what I can do is I can disengage it. I can hold onto this and loosen the screw and then adjust it in slightly and then tighten that screw back down. But again, you don't want to go too far, because what's going to happen is it's going to put too much drag on that motor. So I'm just going to loosen that screw, gently push it in slightly, tighten it up. Sometimes it takes a couple of tries to get it just right. I'm going to go ahead and push it down now. Still not far enough yet. So I'm going to go and just kind of lift this out of the way a little bit, get that screwdriver in there, loosen that screw, adjusted it in a little bit, tighten it again. Still not enough. I must have really let that slip out of position when I loosened that screw to goof it up. Tighten it now. Really, really close. But still, it's not quite making enough contact with that rim, and it's going to be slipping in the process. You can see right now, if I engage the machine, right now, we don't get any bobbin winding. Nothing happening. So we've got to adjust it in just a little bit more. Again, hold on to this so that it doesn't slip. Loosen that screw. And then you apply pressure on this down so that it's going to go a little bit tighter in. Sometimes you go a little bit too far. Tighten that down again. And there, we got some pretty good contact. I might go a little bit further because I think we're going to get some slippage on it. It's spinning well, but it's a little bit light. And I can tell that. I can tell it's a little bit light because if I use my finger against this, it's not moving the balance wheel. it should be moving the balance wheel by doing this. And right now I'm moving the bobbin winding tire, and there's enough of a flux when I engage the motor that it grips that wheel, but if you're winding a bobbin, it's going to slip. When you move this, it should move the balance wheel too. So we're just going to go a little bit further in. Just a little bit further. I'm going to loosen that screw. And again, before you turn that screw and loosen it, get your hand on here so you don't lose what you already gained. So I'm turning that to the rear of the machine, lefty-loosey. And we're going to go just a tiny little bit more. Tighten it back up. Engage that. And now I think we're going to have a winning equation. We went just a little bit further. Let me change the camera angle just slightly. Oops. Okay, that's pretty good. First of all, we've got it engaged. We'll make sure that we're getting good movement with the balance wheel. Motor is still spinning up nice and fast, so we get a nice quick winding of the bobbin. It's not winding slow. But now the true test is if I put my finger on here, can I also move the balance wheel? That's when you know you've got it balanced perfectly with having proper traction. And you can see now if I push on there, look at the balance wheel. You can actually hear the balance wheel moving along with seeing it. Take that off of there. It's really kind of cool when you're running it and you disengage it while it's running, just for fun, just to listen to that surge of the motor. Wait for it, listen. Whoops, get my foot on there. It's a fast motor right there, and it's doing the drag of the bobbin winder, but now wait for it. And again, the great news is if I come out, no smoke. A lot of smoke coming off of this machine for Carol Johnson earlier before the workshop magic, and now she is a very happy girl. So I'm going to go ahead and re-engage that stop action clutch again so that we've got drive down to the needle, and go and get this old material out that I did, this 100% cotton. And again, I didn't go over it again with looking at Ronnie links, but again, just going over it again for all of you. The setup on the 201-2, once I get to the right direction, there we are. The setup for the 201-2 will actually kind of cover the threading. Why don't we do that? I'll see if I can do it with the zoom here. So coming off of the top of the machine, and again, our setup as far as our thread and our needle, it's going to be identical to Ronnie Link's 201-2 that we just put to the test with all of that leather. We're going to have the Coates & Clark dual duty XP thread from Joann's that I buy every weekend when I can, because you buy 3, you get 2 free. You can't beat that. It's just a wonderful deal. And it really is a good thread. It's not, I wouldn't call it a premium thread, but it really is quite good. It's an all-purpose thread that you can use in so many different applications, including going through 16 layers of leather, as I already demonstrated just a little bit ago. But we're going to come off the top. We're going to come through this first thread guide right here. Once the camera decides that it's happy. Come on, camera. It doesn't know what to focus on. Anyway, you can see the thread guide, sort of, kinda. Coming through that thread guide right there. We're then going to come down to the upper tension. And again, whenever you're threading a machine, make sure that you have your presser foot lever up in the back, just like you see it right now. You want to have your presser foot lever up so that when you draw that thread from the top of this thread guide down, you can draw through those discs all the way and make sure it gets properly seated. Then you have to bring the thread around the bottom of this tensioner, and you have to actually draw it up through this spring, and you draw the spring up so that it settles the thread in that little notch right there. You have to kind of draw the spring up outside of its normal range, and it seats that thread in there very nicely. Then from there you're going to come up to the take-up arm. You're going to thread it from right to left. You're going to come down to this thread guide right there on the front of the faceplate. All of a sudden this camera is saying, I don't think I want to focus. I don't want to focus anymore. So we come through that thread guide there. Then you've got a thread guide right there. This one right there. And then there's another thread guide on the opposite side that you have to bring the thread to as well. A little bit hard to see in this shot, but it's just on the other side of there. And then finally, you're going to thread this needle from right to left. Flat side goes to the left, and then you're going to thread this needle from right to left. Yep. This camera's just saying, I don't know if I want to focus anymore. I'm kind of done with focusing right now. I think I'm going to take a break from focusing. So I thought it was appropriate, even though Carol Johnson doesn't refer to her 201-2, her Rolls-Royce of Singer sewing machines, as a leather eater, that I would still run Carol's through the same test of the 2 layers and then ultimately the 3 layers of this veg tan leather. So we're going to be doing about 12 ounces, and then we're going to be boosting it all the way up to about 16 ounces. And again, we're sewing with a non-leather needle. It's a 9014 Schmetz. Looks just like this. Universals, again, are going to have a slightly rounded point. They're not going to have a sharp razor point like a leather needle. So the fact that we're able to, with the sheer brute force and precision of Ronnie's machine, and we hope now with Carol's machine, go through that much leather with a needle that has a slightly rounded point, imagine what we could go through with a leather needle that has a sharper razor point on the end of it that's going to slice right through that leather. We don't have that benefit right now. It's the brute force and the precision of the way I prepared the machine that it's able to accomplish something like this that absolutely is insane. A 201-2 going through that much leather. You already saw it with Ronnie's machine. Now we're going to see if we can duplicate that on Carol's machine. But I kind of cheated a little bit. I cut the edge of this leather off, and that's what we're going to be working with on Carol's machine. So I'm going to have to sew straighter than I normally do so that I don't sew off of the leather. You know what I mean? Yeah. All right. So let me zoom in right about there. Kind of lock the camera in place a little bit. Need a little bit of encouragement music. Since we're going to be taking on a pretty doggone crazy task, we might as well use the same song, right? Use the same song to inspire this 1940s 201-2 to be able to take on a task that when they built this machine back in the day, they never imagined this machine being capable of sewing something like that. Yeah. And that's where I say, I think after the workshop magic gets done with one of these machines, it is stronger, it is faster, it is able to leap tall buildings that it could not leap when it left the factory back in the day. And that's what salespeople that work for Singer people that worked in the factories said, doggone it, your machines are stronger than ours leaving the factory. Oh well, sorry about that, guys. All right, let's check this out. Quick drink of soda, and then I'm going to shut off our Calypso style music. All right, quick pause on that, quick pause. Need a little bit of victory music. I hope we have victory music. Be able to get this done, and have some fun. I'm going to move our sew-offs that we've already done, this cotton and this denim. We'll move this off to the side and move on to some higher, crazier frontiers. All right, I'm going to get these going. You can actually see that I did a quick little test sew-off on these on Ronnie's machine, so you'll see some holes already. And no, I'm not going to sew through the same holes. We're going to make our own holes. Start that right about there. I'm going to increase our presser foot pressure even a little bit higher. And then we're going to try to buzz down, do our best to buzz down these 2 layers of veg tan leather. I'm going to buzz down, and then we'll add this 3rd layer. And again, I'm being a little bit conservative because it's a little bit harder to find leather around in the Twin Cities area. And so rather than using a full-blown piece, I'm using a smaller piece here to go down. So I'm going to have to make sure, let's see, maybe I can go to the left side. Maybe that's wiser. We'll go to the left, and then we can lay down the second sew-off to the right. All right, let me set it right about there. And again, I didn't test this on Carol's machine, the machine that was smoking more than running just a short time ago. I'm hoping that she will be able to get this done with as much success as Ronnie's machine did just a moment ago. All right? I'm going to keep blah, blah, blahing because, yeah, you never know. I mean, you do these premieres, you do live streams. I don't do any editing. Hoping for some great success here. All right, here we go. And I'm going to keep my hands right here. I got to turn that little camera screen back. I'm going to shut off that light behind me. I'm hoping that this will be enough light because I'm not able to see that camera lens at all when I look up. There we go, now I can see it. Is that enough? I think you can still see it. I can turn the light back on when we're looking at the stitches. Okay. Little bit nerve-wracking here. Little bit nerve-wracking. Hold that back a little bit. All right, 2 layers, and I've got them back to back. So we've got the grain going against the grain, which makes it even a tougher sew-off. We did the same thing on Ronnie's machine. We'll see how we do. Every machine is unique and different, but this one was injected with a lot of workshop magic, so I'm hoping that it will get the job done just as nicely as Ronnie's machine. All right, enough stalling, Scott, enough stalling. Let's get her done. Here we go. Ooh, nervous. Little nervous. Oh, we had a little bit of a skip stitch on the end. We had a little bit of a skip stitch on the end. And I know it's not the timing of the machine. Could very well be the needle on the machine. We're going to try it again. If we get the same thing, we're going to have to change this needle out. My garbage can is like 3 miles away. Come over here, Eagle Powers. So we did get a skip stitch right down here. I'm going to look at the camera, see if you can see it. Right there. And that can happen when we've got a needle that's got a burr on it, got other issues going with it. So I'm going to try it on 2 layers again, see if we get another skip stitch. If we do, we're going to change that needle out real quick. I'll put on some more music and we will do what we need to do. Okay? All right, let's give this a try. Here we go. Yep, we got skip stitches again. And I did do some sewing on this machine, obviously, to test it. So I am going to put on some music and change this needle and see if that solves our issue with this 201-2 from the 1940s. Because right now she is not a happy girl with that needle. I'm going to loosen that needle clamp. All right, let me put some music on. We'll get this changed out and we'll take another swing at it. Come out a little bit here. There we go. And this is why people love this channel, because we show the real deal. Sometimes you run into things. Feel a little bit of a catch on there. And notice again, I'm setting the flat side to the left. Got a little curl on there. Let's try that one again. A little bit of a curl on there. to stop the music real quick and give you a quick little tip. The quick little tip is the 201-2 needle sockets can sometimes allow the needle to pivot a little bit as you're inserting it, which is a big deal when you're trying to make sure that that flat side is completely straight and that the scarf is going to be orientated in relation to the hook so that you don't have any skip stitching when you're sewing with it. And because this is allowing that, it can allow that that flat side to pivot, it's also going to allow that scarf to be a little bit out of alignment in relation to the hook system. I can see right now it's pivoting a little bit to the front. Rotate that back again. Turn my light back on too so I can a little bit more light. And what I was doing before to double check to see how well it's orientated is I slid the thread through. Oh, you're way off. Goodness gravy. This camera's getting used to this new tripod. I'm going to thread the needle and then move the thread back and forth to check to see how well that needle is orientated. See that that scarf is just a little bit, it's pretty doggone good. We're going to try that, and that can also happen if you're threading a machine like this. Trying to see the shot that y'all are looking at. If you're threading a machine like this and that needle rotates just a little bit in that needle clamp and takes that scarf out of alignment, that can also cause skip stitching as well. Didn't have any of that happen on the cotton or the denim, but we're getting it on the leather right now. So that tells me that we might have an issue with that needle socket allowing that needle to pivot. And you're really going to have to kind of watch that, aren't you? You have to really keep an eye on that to make sure that it's not doing that. I'm going to put in a single layer. And we're going to buzz through that to see whether or not we're getting any of that skip stitching. If we are, then we have that needle pivoting in that needle clamp again. And it doesn't do it once you lock it down, but when you're setting it in place, you can just get it a little bit off, and it allows that, that hook to come around and to miss that thread. All right, let me bring this over here. All right, we're going to try this single layer of this veg tan leather. We had an issue with doing 2 layers with the way that needle was performing, so we changed the needle out. Now let's see what we get on Carol's machine. And I will deal with additional adjustments if they're needed. I know I didn't have any trouble with cotton or denim, so if we have an issue again with this leather on Carol's machine, I'm going to go ahead and go past the leather and then we'll move into some of the other sew-offs and just see if we have any issues with that. Okay? All right, here we go. No issues with a single layer, so I think we might have had, as I could feel with my finger, we might have had a barb on that needle that occurred. Because I'm looking at this and we're getting some beautiful stitching with this single layer of veg tan leather. Go ahead and lower that down. We'll lean this against there and we'll look at the stitching on a single layer. Single layer is still going to be 3 to 4 ounces of leather. So it's definitely not a light sew-off. And now it's testing me to see if I can get it to balance. Let's see here. All right, let's see if we can look at these stitches while it's still standing up. We had that other one that kept falling over. I've got it angled a little bit more in relation to the camera, a little bit more like this. And hopefully we can get a good look at those stitches. You notice I did not make any hook time changing on the machine. We changed out the needle, and we had absolute success with this single layer. Again, if you look at it from the top, I don't know why this camera is not focusing. Unless it's my eyes. Let's see if I can shut this one off, see if that helps. Still getting used to the lighting in this temporary workshop. It can cause a little bit of a challenge, can't it? Let me move the camera as well. The other thing I can do is just take it off of the tripod temporarily, can't I? Just take it off of the tripod and get down on my knees by this material. And if that's the way we need to do it, then doggone it, we're going to do it that way. So these are the stitches we just laid down. I'm going to shut this light off too. That might be goofing us up a little bit. These are the stitches we just did after having a series. I'm going to show you these two side by side. We launched with that first one. We had a beautiful start. Skip stitch there. Skip stitch there. And there. Which could have been simply a product of that needle developing a barb on it. We had 3 different areas over the 2 stitch lines. We changed out that needle, and now all of a sudden she is just sewing up a storm, isn't she? Beautiful, beautiful stitching. And again, leather doesn't matter unless you have an issue with that needle. Then all of a sudden that scarf, if it's just a little bit off, if I zoom in on the, I'm going to zoom in on the needle first of all. I can find the needle. There it is. I'm going to put my hand behind there to block it. You can see the orientation of the scarf right there at the top. I think you can see that. If that's just a little bit off, if when you insert that needle you're a little bit hasty and you get that scarf off, you get the flat side off, excuse me, you get the flat side off, then that's also going to throw the alignment of the scarf off as well. So when that hook comes around, depending on the load of the sewing that you're doing and the number of thicknesses in that, it can cause that that hook to miss the thread in that scarf area. So right now I think we're in pretty doggone good shape. We had success with one layer. I'm willing to try 2 layers. I don't want to jinx myself. Maybe we'll do that right at the end. But I think right now we've got a winning scenario. Just seeing if this is able to focus on that. This again is the one we just did after changing the needle. And me really being careful again with the needle socket on this 201-2, it can allow that machine needle to pivot a little bit as you're inserting it. And now you can see Carol's machine is just spot on, absolutely spot on. All right, let's turn it over and look at that lock stitch. Beautiful stitching. I got so distracted by the alignment of the needle, I never really gave credit where credit is due, and that's Carol's 201-2 sewed through 3 to 4 ounces of this veg tan leather and laid down an absolute page 34 plus stitch. Just absolutely gorgeous. All the way across. Now we're going to look at that lock stitch and see what we think of that. So I'm spinning that around. Get that lock stitch into place. Beautiful, beautiful stitching. Very, very lovely. So sometimes the issue can be resolved very easily. It can be resolved by simply changing the needle out. We always talk about remembering the basics, you know, putting fresh thread on the machine. Don't use that old thread that's been on grandma's or mom's machine for, you know, for 50 plus years, and it's been sitting by a window and getting inundated with UV light and everything else. Put on fresh thread, wind a fresh bobbin, and put in a fresh needle. And always really kind of watch for that needle to potentially rotate so that you throw that scarf out of alignment. And that can cause that problem with skip stitching just as easily as a barb on that needle as well. So beautiful stitching there. And we looked at it on the other machine, but I'll just kind of open this up and just show you. When you're putting this bobbin in, you're going to put it in so the thread is underneath the bottom, which means as you're pulling this, it's going to be rotating clockwise. So that's also another critical factor in setting the machine up for success. I'm going to go get this back up on the tripod, and we'll go through some more sew-offs on Carol's machine. I think even one layer, which I might stick with for right now and then move into some of the other sew-off materials, will be our launching point for this 201. And then we'll look at whether or not we want to wrap it up with some additional leather sewing. I do have another leather circle cut out here. It's a little bit smaller than I typically do, but I've got this leather circle of this veg tan leather as well that we can always do. But I'm going to throw that to the back right now. And we'll move into some of the other sew-offs and see what we think. Turn our big LED light back on. I hope that doesn't goof us up too badly for the camera. All right, so I think next I'm going to put on a little bit of more calypso music, and then get ready for our next sew-off. I just turned my heater back on down here. It's a little bit cool down here. It actually made my nose run. Not that you need to know that. All right, that song goes on and on and on. I think we'll give that song a break for right now. Now we're going to pivot away from leather sewing after we had to change the needle out because of the skip stitching that we were getting. We're going to be focusing on some polyester cotton blend. This is a material that came off of a quilting square that Susie gave me as an additional material to sew off. And we're going to give this a go. And hopefully I've got that scarf and everything lined up properly now. And we'll be able to go through the remainder of our sew-offs here without any skip stitching. Which, yeah, I mean, it happens, doesn't it? All of you have experienced that, I'm quite sure. All right, so let's give this a go. And we'll go down this 100% polyester, oh, I shouldn't say 100%, excuse me, polyester cotton blend. Let me get that right. Look through the camera, see how our shot is. Looks like it's pretty good. I'm going to leave it just like that. I'll leave this light off for right now. And we'll give this a go. I'm just going to check that, make sure that's nice and snug. All right, here we go. Yeah. It looks good as far as that needle and rechecking the alignment. We've got a very, very solid stitch, no skip stitching. But our top stitch looks like it might just be a tiny little bit, just going to look at it again, just a tiny little bit on the weak side. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to back off our upper tension just slightly to give just a little bit more pull to that thread. We're going to stitch it off one more time and just see if we can get a little bit more of a poppiness out of that polyester cotton blend. Polyester is always can be a little bit of a tricky material to sew. A little bit of a tricky material to sew, and can also result in skip stitching, which we've already had our taste of during this premiere. Some really good looking stitching. We'll look at both of these at the same time after we get done with this next stitch line. I just want to see if we can draw a little bit more out of that top stitch. Okay, back that off, back it off even just a hair more. There we go. Let's give this a try again. Hopefully I didn't go too far with it. Yep, that's exactly what I wanted. That's exactly what I wanted. I wanted just a little bit more poppiness out of that top stitch. So that was row number 1 right there, row number 2 right there. We'll take a look at those and just make sure that we didn't compromise our lock stitch. Our lock stitching on the back right now looks really good. And that's always the balance factor. When you're adjusting tension, you don't want to go too far or you'll compromise the other side of the material. I don't think I have any. Let me put this right there to kind of stabilize that a little bit. So we're going to look at that, the top row, we'll look at the bottom row, we'll compare those two, see what impact we brought to that top stitch, then we'll flip the material over and we'll look at that lock stitching. Let me shut that light off again above. I think that goofs up the camera just a little bit as far as being able to, but then I have to turn this one back on. Lighting is such a joy when you're trying to do live streams like this, isn't it? Let me rotate the camera a little bit too, see if that helps. Otherwise, I'm going to do what I did before and just get off the tripod, get down on my knees, and do it that way, which I think I'm about to do that right now. Let's do that again. Just go off the tripod and get down by that material nice and close. All right, zooming out. Okay, so getting a little bit closer. I changed the light setting on this fancy light that Susie gave me again too. So if you look at those two straight away, look at that top row we did first. You can see that that top stitch is a little bit on the weak side. I think you can see that readily enough. The knot is a little bit higher up, so it doesn't give us that poppiness to that top stitch. So all we did is we backed off this upper tension over here. Where am I pointing? We backed off this upper tension over here a little bit from, it was on 5, we brought it down to just above 4, and then all of a sudden that stitching comes into form very nicely on that lower row. Let me go across. You can see right away the difference, I think, on what we brought with that simple little adjustment. Tension is something that battles everyone. It doesn't matter if you've been sewing for 50 years. Some people have never been taught the basics of tension adjustment. Susie and I were talking about that the other day, that it's one of those things that you kind of take for granted being a part of this classroom. We cover it so much, I emphasize it so much, I detail it so much that people, it becomes almost rudimentary. And then all of a sudden when you encounter someone that's been sewing probably longer than you and they don't understand the basics of it, right away your eyes kind of pop a little bit and you go, well, let's talk about it then. Let's talk about that when you have a top stitch like on that upper row that's not as poppy as it could be. That you simply have to back off that upper tension because that upper tension is pulling against to define that lock stitch. And if it's pulling too hard, it takes away from the top stitch, doesn't it? It takes away from the top stitch, and then you don't get a stitch like this. You get a stitch like that up there that's a little bit less pronounced. And that bobbin case down below is pulling down to try to define this top stitch. And sometimes it's not able to pull hard enough because that upper tension over there, that upper tension is pulling too hard. So it's a tug of war. This is pulling up to define the lock stitch. This down here is pulling down to define the top stitch. And sometimes if this has a little bit too much muscle, it's going to overpower this and take away from that top stitch, right? So you can look right away that lower row is clearly more page 34 plus than that top row. You especially see it right there at the beginning. Now if we turn this over, we'll see if we can look at that lock stitch. Tilt that back a little bit, hopefully. And both of our rows of lock stitching should be pretty spot on because that upper tension was pulling a little bit harder than it needed to pull. Get it even a little bit closer. So no issues with the lock stitch at all. Our top stitch was the thing that was a little bit weak. So the basics of tension are not as basic as we think sometimes. If we're looking at this top stitch and we're going, it's a little bit weak, then we back off our upper tension slightly. If we look at that top stitch and we go, it's too poppy, and our lock stitch on the bottom is looking weak, then we need to go the opposite and we need to increase this upper tension. We need to increase the upper tension if our lock stitch is looking weak. So this controls lock, but also can influence the top stitch. This primarily controls that top stitch. And when I'm pointing at that, I'm not pointing at the clippers. I'm pointing at the bobbin case that's a part of this hook assembly right here. It's going to be this top portion right here that the bobbin sits in. Okay? So hopefully that's a little bit helpful. And we'll move on to our next sew off. We've done a little bit of leather. We've done cotton. Did we do cotton? We did cotton off camera. Excuse me. We did cotton off camera. And now we're going to be doing, this is only 4 layers of this poly cotton blend. Now we're going to be moving on to strictly cotton, and we'll be trying to do 8 layers. I'm kind of getting into that 8-layer thing now when it comes to cotton, just to give people a different appreciation for what commonly is thought to be a light sew-off, but you can make it a heavy sew-off by doing up to 8 layers of it. We'll give that a go. All right, let me zoom in on this, take a little bit of a Diet Coke break, as we're going to be taking on a heavier sew-off task now with that cotton. And I'll put on a different song so I don't drive you all crazy. let's put a pause on that. And now let's move into, like I said, let's move into some cotton, but let's see if we can't make it a little bit more on the challenging side. Kind of like we did on Ronnie's machine as well. So I've got basic cotton here. I've got to turn my little screen around. I've got basic cotton here. It's from a fat quarter at Walmart. That's where I buy my 100% cotton fat quarters. They did have them at 99 cents. Now they bumped them all the way up to $1.37, I think it was, which I was a little bit annoyed by. But what can you do, right? All retailers are kind of taking us to task as far as the prices that we're used to paying versus what we're getting now. I'm just going to cut this little unfinished edge off. And no, I'm not using the Guggenheim scissors. I'm using these other scissors that Susie gave me as an option for cutting. They're really quite incredible. You can cut practically anything, and they're also self-sharpening. The only thing you have to be careful about is if you look at my finger right there with that cut, they've added an additional razor blade to the edge of here, and Susie warned me about it, but I was cutting some material and I went to draw this back, and my finger was right there, and I cut my finger. It didn't bleed really bad, but it bled enough, so I had to kind of super glue it shut to get ready for this premiere. So, all right, so let's give this a go. I've got these 2 layers to start. I'm going to go ahead and fold it like this, and we're up to 4 layers. Let's see, we're up to 4 layers. We're up to 6 layers, and now we're all the way up to 8 layers. So 8 layers of cotton, that really falls into the realm, at least I think it does, into the realm of a heavier sew-off for a sewing machine. So we're going to see if we can do that on Carol's 201-2. Get that take-up arm all the way up. And we'll see if we can accomplish this. Hopefully we don't run into any more skip stitching. Otherwise I'll have to look at that needle socket with a little bit more scrutiny to see if it's allowing that needle to pivot. Needle sockets do have an expiration. That's why they sell them aftermarket. Over time you're screwing it in, you're unscrewing it, you're screwing it in. It can allow a little bit of a pivot of that needle. And when you get into the heavier sew-offs where hook timing is even more essential, it can create problems. So hopefully we don't have that. Let's see what we get. All right, here we go. So 8 layers of cotton, and Carol's machine is just doing a little dance for us is what it's doing. Apparently when I put that new needle back in, we eliminated the barb issue. I also was a little bit more careful about making sure about that flat side orientation to allow that, that hook to come around and to grab that thread in the scarf. And after just doing 8 layers of cotton, I think we're in pretty good shape. I'm going to put it like this, and I'm just going to, right from a sitting position, I'm going to grab that camera and see if we can look at these stitches straight away. All right, I'm going to leave it like that. See if I can grab that camera. And folks, I'm just going to pause right there and just say 8 layers of cotton. When you get to 8 layers of cotton, it's kind of like going to heavier denim. I don't think that that's an easy sew-off. Cotton oftentimes is thought to be easy peasy. When you get to 8 layers, it's a different story. And we've got absolutely page 34 plus stitching across there. I'm going to go across real slow so you can look at them. And this is our top stitch, obviously. Beautiful, beautiful stitching. Again, 8 layers of denim. Eight layers of denim. Oh my gosh. I need more Diet Coke. 8 layers of cotton. You all know what I meant. Beautiful, beautiful. Could even back off that upper tension even maybe just a little bit more, but all in all, you can see right there in particular, right at that launch, we just got just a beautiful, beautiful straight stitch. And again, we're generating probably right around 6 to 7 stitches per inch. And on this particular Premiere, I can be a little bit more savvy, and instead of grabbing a penny out of my pocket, I can grab a quarter, because a quarter is almost exactly an inch in diameter. We found that out in the last live stream. I think it's 0.95 blah blah blah. But a beautiful, beautiful top stitch. Let's go ahead and flip it over and look at that lock stitch. And again, you can see the thickness of cotton that we went through. We can look at that lock stitch now and see what we think of that. Got to tilt it back a little bit so we can see that stitching. Trying to get that camera to focus. I'll start on this end maybe. And yes, Carol does have some clear coat that's breaking up. You can see that right there. And I did not re-clear coat her machine. Right now I'm just trying to get the camera to focus. That's enough of a challenge. All right, there's our lock stitch. Beautiful lock stitch. I'm going to start to work my way across. Beautiful, beautiful lock stitch. Definitely a page 34 plus. I'll kind of zoom in even closer there if the camera will allow me. Nope, it won't. It says, that's close enough, buddy. That's close enough. Trying to hold my breath a little bit and control my breathing so that I don't wiggle the camera so much. But that's a beautiful, beautiful lock stitch. I'll come out a little bit so we can look at the, as I used to always say, the totality of the stitching. Let's see if I can shut that light off too. Shut off the light on the machine. That might help us a little bit too. That was creating a little bit of a glare, I think. So some beautiful, beautiful stitching. That's our lock stitching again. 8 layers of 100% cotton. Top stitching, which is kind of upside down right now. Top stitching as well. Trying to get the right angle of the camera as I'm holding it manually. And lock stitching. All right, I don't want to belabor the cotton any further, but I'm always impressed when you can take a material that's commonly thought of as a light sew-off and give it a heavy-duty edge. Give it a heavy-duty edge like this. We can also look at it like this as well. Beautiful, beautiful stitching. We'll flip it over and look at the other side. So a definite success. I'm going to throw this back into our growing pile, both on camera and off camera. And we'll move on to our next sew-off, which is probably going to be this paper material. Probably give this paper material a try next. I don't know if I'll revisit the leather again, apart from maybe doing a final sew-off of this this chunk of veg tan leather. in a circular sense and see whether or not we can execute this successfully as well. But right now I want to concentrate on this paper. I did, I believe, 12 layers in the other live stream on Ronnie's machine. I want to do the same thing on Carol's machine as well. Paper is something that people are sewing more now. A lot of people are picking up that vinyl paper that I talked about at the Dollar Tree, and they're kind of getting into that. That's what, see, I have an example of it somewhere. This is that vinyl paper that the Dollar Tree sells. All kinds of colors that you can imagine. The only problem is it's got a sticky backing underneath this paper cover, and the needle can pick up that sticky glue, and it can kind of screw your needle up a little bit. So if I sew this, it's usually the last thing I do, and then you kind of take a little bit of rubbing alcohol with a Q-tip swab and just go down all areas of that needle straight down. Don't go up, because you'll catch that point, but go down and you can get all that glue off of your needle after you sew something like this. But I'd like to do some paper right now, and meantime we'll just do a little bit of music. That'll be my little interlude. Ah, sounds like holla music. All right, I'm going to stop that music for a moment and kind of explain what I just did. I've got this, I've got to turn the camera screen around again. Okay, so this is that parchment paper. Again, paper is notoriously very difficult to stitch through. There are some people that use vintage machines to do bookbinding of sorts. And boy, oh boy, that is a tricky trade. You got to have just the right setup to have success. But we're starting with 4 layers of this parchment paper. I folded it over once, it gets us up to 8. And then folding it one more time is going to get us all the way up to 12 layers of this parchment paper. And if you can look at it from the side or the end, it's not a super easy task. It's much more difficult than people might think. So I'm going to go ahead and slide this underneath the presser foot, and we're going to give this a go through the 12 layers of parchment. And again, our setup, we're using a Coats & Clark dual duty XP thread. We're using a Schmetz 9014 universal needle. We've already run it through the races a little bit, but this is a fresher needle because we swapped it out. We were getting that skip stitching on the 2 layers of the leather. And hopefully we've overcome that, but you just never know when you're shooting something, without editing. We're shooting something live right now that's being broadcast later as a premiere. So we'll see how we do on this. 12 layers of parchment paper leaves a lot of opportunity for things to go wrong. A lot of opportunity for things to go wrong. So I'm going to give this a go again. And we'll see how we do on 12 layers of parchment paper. I think it really is a test to the machine in many, many respects. And hopefully we have success. All right, here we go. We just hit that. You saw that. We hit that. I didn't give it enough gas. That needle hit that, and it was like, I don't know if I really want to do this or not. I don't know if I want to do this or not. I'm going to give it a little bit more gas this time, and hopefully we can pierce through that straight away. All right. You already saw the power of this machine when I fired it up. That's not in question. Question is my big shoes, my size 13 shoes. So this is 12 layers of parchment that we just did. Not an easy task at all. Not an easy task. But boy, oh boy, did we nail it. Beautiful stitching. That's our top stitch. That's our lock stitch. You can tell on the paper right away because when that needle comes through, just like on certain materials, you can see that little tuft of the paper that the needle pushed out when it came and swept down through these layers of parchment paper. Let me see if I can balance this up, and I'll grab the camera again. We'll take a look at these stitches a little bit closer. All right, getting there, getting there, getting there, getting there. I really love the look. I would almost be inspired to become a bookbinder myself. I love the look of the stitching on this paper. It doesn't distort the stitch. It gives you a true picture of how beautifully that 201-2 of Carol Johnson's is stitching. You look at that right there, and I'll tell you one thing, that is a page 34 plus stitch. It's absolutely off the charts. The spacing, the formation, the integrity of the stitch, the presentation of the stitch. I don't think it can get any better than that. It's just absolutely amazing. We'll kind of go across, take a closer look at that. I can do that without bumping into the upper tension. Absolutely gorgeous, gorgeous stitching. And again, this is the packing parchment that Amazon puts in with all of their packages to safeguard whatever you've ordered on Amazon. Some of you have gotten this parchment yourself as that packing supplement that they put in the package to keep that stuff from moving around. So you can try this at home if you're if you're an Amazon shopper. You've gotten this stuff probably numerous times and just recycled it or thrown it away. Now you can use it to put your vintage sewing machines to the test and to really see how beautifully your machine is stitching. Absolutely breathtaking. Again, that's 12 layers of this packing parchment that Amazon uses. 12 layers. All right, I've shown you the top stitch enough. It's absolutely off the charts. It's absolutely brag-worthy. Now let's flip it over and take a look at that lock stitch. And there's no faking this. You can tell right away. You can tell right away what the lock stitch is because of that little tuft of paper that gets displaced in the sewing process. So we're going to zoom in on that, and you can take a look at that lock stitch now. Coolest thing. It's like a bullet going through a target almost, isn't it? You can look at a target and right away, if you've ever done any shooting or anything like that, you can tell right away what side of the target you're looking at. I mean, they label it, they make it pretty easy, but if you're shooting on a blank piece of paper, you can look at it right away and tell what side you're looking at because of the displacement of the material. Beautiful stitching. That's our lock stitch again. And this is our top stitch one last time through 12 layers of Amazon parchment. I'll just give credit to Amazon and just say, we like your parchment. It's great for doing sew-offs on. And I just saw that sitting down here in the temporary workshop. I asked Susie if I could goof around with it. She says, absolutely. I'm glad I did. Glad I did. It's just beautiful stitching, isn't it? You almost are inspired to make a garment out of Amazon parchment, aren't you? Imagine how that stitching would look. Quite spectacular. All right, so let me put this back up on the tripod. We'll have just a quick little interlude. I'm going to throw this back in our pile of our sew-offs that we've done already. And we're almost at the finish line on Carol's machine. And again, Carol is going to be meeting in Oconto, where the workshop no longer is located. Can actually be meeting at the hotel that I'm staying at so that she can reclaim her amazing 201-2 from the 1940s. And a quick little shout out to her husband. Her husband is having some health challenges, kind of like Candido's wife Rachel right now. We all experience our health challenges from time to time, don't we? And so definitely keep Candido's wife Rachel and keep Carol's husband, and I am totally blanking on his name right now. Let me see if I can remember what his name is. I do not have Carol's husband's name. So anyway, God knows his name. So remember Carol's husband as well, as he is going through some health challenges. All right, and I heard my phone go off a couple of times. I'm going to real quick check that. Excuse me. No, it's a message from Emma. Emma was wanting to share a picture of me, and it was in October, and very, very cold out. And she took a picture of me walking down the causeway. It was Emma's first visit to Oconto. I'll just show that to you real quick. This is a picture of me walking down the causeway. There I am. And then there was another one she took that was 2 years earlier, and I was being a rebel and wearing shorts, and I think there was ice on certain parts of the water. You can see my legs right there, bare. But I've got my upper body warmed. I don't know if anybody else wears shorts in the winter time or fall time, but I do sometimes. So thank you to Emma for sharing those really cool pictures of my walk down the causeway. I should say our walk down the causeway, and she took a snapshot 2 years apart, so that was kind of cool. All right, so a little bit of music. I'm going to grab a little bit of soda, and then we'll finish off our work on this really cool 201-2 from the 1940s. And again, this machine is going to be having a birthday December 20th, born back in 1946. So if anyone in the live chat that's a mathematician wants to do the math and tell us what birthday will Carol Johnson's machine be celebrating this December 20th. December 20th. And again, if you joined us late, Carol's 1946 machine came from a production group size of only 15,000 machines. That really raises the rarity quite a bit on this machine. So yeah, if someone wants to do it, born in 1946, Christmas of 2023, how old will Carol Johnson's 201-2, the Rolls-Royce of Singer sewing machines, be? How old? All right, I'm going to be sewing off on cotton again. I did this on Ronnie's machine as well. I'm going to be sewing off on this charcoal colored cotton. 100% cotton from a fat quarter. I've got that little rough edge again. I think I'll trim that off real quick. And hopefully not cut myself again. These are really good scissors. They're not quite Guggenheim, but they do a really good job. All right, let me bring this music to a close, and then we'll be sewing off on this charcoal colored 100% cotton, just as we did on Ronnie's machine. It doesn't want to be quiet. All right, stop. All right, let me get the camera lined up. Oh boy, I'm way out. I just wanted to let you see me cutting that cotton. I like this charcoal colored cotton. It's really quite cool looking. Really pretty. So we're going to take this up to 8 layers, just like we did on the green 100% cotton, and see if we can have success in laying down a page 34 stitch on this charcoal colored cotton as well. All right, so I'm going to turn that around, the little screen. I keep forgetting to do that. And we'll give this machine a go. And again, if you joined us a little bit late, Carol's machine had a number of things going on with the motor, required a little bit of rewiring, also needed some serious deep cleaning as well. And then also rewired the foot controller as well because it had the wrong gauge wiring on there. So we've got, let's see, we're going to do 8 layers. I've got 2 layers, 4 layers. I better fold that again. There's 2 layers, now 4 layers. So 2, 4, 6, 8. So 8 layers of this charcoal 100% cotton. We're going to give this a try now and see how Carol's machine does with this. And 100% cotton is 100% cotton, right? But at the same time, when you go between different materials, the dye that's in the materials can also impact sew-offs. So if we go from a green 100% cotton like this, and we all of a sudden go to a charcoal, it could influence what our outcome is. So we'll have to wait and see how this 201-2 handles pivoting from one color to another. Certain thread colors can also influence the sewing. So if you're ever sewing with a certain color thread and you're running into issues with stitch quality, maybe skip stitches or a variety of other things, know that that can be influenced by the dye that's in that thread just as much as the dye in the material can affect the sew-off outcome as well. So don't right away assume that it's an issue with the needle. It could be the material itself or the thread you're choosing if you're adding colors to that. Okay, so let's give this a go and see how we do. Got to bring that take-up arm all the way up. Right now it's almost all the way down. And we'll see if we can run down another, what I would consider to be in the realm of a heavy-duty sew-off. I mean, we're going through 8 layers of cotton. That certainly is not easy peasy, in my opinion. So let's give this a go. And then we only have maybe one other sew off to do if I end up doing it, and that would be sewing in a circle to the 1812 overture. One of my favorite things to do. All right, let's give this a go. Here we go. Yeah, even as you move from one color to another, the way the machine has to work to get through that, it sounded just a little bit different than when we sewed the green. The green may have been a little bit easier for the machine to get through. It's hard to say, isn't it? These tables that I'm sewing on right now, I'm used to a heavy wood table that really doesn't have any give or vibration from the machine as it's sewing. These are tables that Susie's letting me use in the temporary workshop. They're plastic with metal legs. They're very sturdy tables, but they have a tendency to get a little bit of a jiggle, especially when a machine is working. You may have noticed that in the last sew off. So that's something to kind of watch for. Watch what kind of tables you're using as you're putting your machine to work. All right, let me lean that against there, see if I can balance it. We'll look at the top stitch first, and then we'll look at that lock stitch. I'm going to take the camera off the tripod again, get you dizzy for a few seconds as I'm trying to line it up. And also, the visibility of the stitching will also be affected by the color of the background, which is the material. I am nowhere even close to this stitch off right there. So let's see if I can adjust the angle of the camera a little bit, give you better visibility of that stitch. There we go. Beautiful stitching. And I think we have a pretty good balance right now on that tension. I'm not seeing any signs of the knot working its way to the top. We've got a nicely defined top stitch. And I think hopefully we'll have a nicely defined lock stitch. They're working together and not fighting each other. Very, very nice. And again, you can see from the edge there, 8 layers. It's not an easy peasy sew off. That's a lot of material for that needle to go through and to maintain stitch integrity. Beautiful top stitching. Come out, totality of the stitching, kind of look at it that way. Really quite lovely. Turn that over. And we'll look at that lock stitch now. Kind of lean it back a little bit. All right, let's start on this end. Hopefully our camera decides to be kind. There's our lock stitching. Really, really good looking stitching. I didn't say it about the top stitch, but that's definitely a page 34 plus stitch. Really, really nice. Really, really lovely. Very, very nice stitching. So if you've never tried it before, I'm sure you've gone through 2, maybe even 4 layers of cotton. Try bumping it all the way up to 8 and see how your machine does as far as maintaining stitch quality. See how it does. All right, totality of the stitching on our lock stitch. Beautiful, beautiful stitching. And the same thing on that top stitch as well. All right, I'm going to throw this to the back. We've got a mounting pile back there, as you can see. We'll throw that back there. And yeah, I'm going to decide what we're going to do on this last sew off. We might just do this fairly thick piece of veg tan leather. And I'm debating whether or not I go for 2 layers again on this particular machine. I think we've resolved the issue of the alignment of the needle, the burr on the needle, but I would, yeah, let me contemplate that with a little bit of music and a little bit of Diet Coke. All right, so I'm gonna put this back up. And let's see, I'm almost got it. Almost got it. There we go. Ooh, this is kind of mellow. I'm going to get stoked a little bit. There we go. I like this one. I just realized I never changed stitch length on Carol's machine, so I'm going to do a quick row on this 8 layers of cotton at probably around 10 to 12 stitches per inch. And I'm going to grab out a quarter real quick so I can be more scientific, semi-scientific. All right, I think I'm pretty close to 12 stitches per inch. Let's give this a go. Hope I can't see what I'm... Flip the screen around here. All right, here we go. So the machine is rocking a little bit. The machine is like rocking a little bit. It's got so much power now. On a wood stable table, it's not going to have that wiggle jiggle. And I should mention, in conjunction with this premiere, and I'll probably be starting this premiere a little bit earlier, so keep watch for that. Susie and I will have the opportunity, as we're traveling south, to pass through Thorpe, Wisconsin, and meet and have lunch with Teresa and Tim, who are a regular part of the live stream. So that's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to be meeting at a local restaurant in Thorpe and having lunch together, breaking bread together, getting acquainted, meeting each other face to face for the first time. And that'll be a lot of cool fun going on. I'm looking forward to that a lot. So real quick, let's look at this stitch that I just did. I wanted to do a smaller stitch. And we'll take a look at that real quick on this 201-2 that belongs to Carol Johnson. You can just get so close that it says, no closer, buddy, no closer. Well, I just realized my card, I think, is almost full. I better wrap this up quickly. All right, I didn't realize it had been running so long. It says I think I have 4 minutes left, or something like that. All right, let's see if we can quickly do a sew-off on this leather. We might run out of time, unfortunately. So beautiful stitching. I didn't even show you the other side. I'm getting anxious now with the time. Beautiful lock stitching as well. And you can't even see that. Technology drives us buggy. All right. Just about out of time. Just about out of time. The camera stops. It's not my fault this time. But it seems like no matter which way we go, we run into technical difficulties, don't we? 3 minutes left. All right, let me see what I can do. This is going to be a challenge. I'm going to advance it. Here we go. I think we have 2 minutes left. Almost out of space. It's really weird. I didn't think we ran that long. Here we go. I'm just going all over the place. All right, I'm going to stop right there. I'd like to go further, but I'm out of time. Beautiful stitching. God bless everybody. Take care. Ha ha! See ya!